Picture this. You're scrolling through your phone at midnight. You see some random post that makes you laugh, and you think about sending it to someone. But then you stop. Because who exactly would you send it to? Your work buddies? They're just work buddies. That guy you used to hang out with in college? You haven't talked to him in 3 years. Your girlfriend or wife? She wouldn't get it. And that's when it hits you. You don't have a single person you can just talk to. Not really. Welcome to the club. You're not alone in being alone. 15% of men right now have 0 close friends. 0. That's triple what it was 30 years ago. And if you're under 30, the numbers get even worse. 28% of young men report having no close social connections at all. Not colleagues, not acquaintances, not drinking buddies. We're talking about the kind of friend you can call at 2 in the morning when your life is falling apart. But here's what nobody wants to admit. This isn't just about being lonely. This is about something far more dangerous. This silent epidemic is destroying your mental health, sabotaging your relationships with women, and quite literally killing men faster than obesity or smoking. The Surgeon General called it a public health crisis. Men account for 80% of suicides in this country. 80%. And still, nobody's talking about the real reason why. Let me tell you what actually happened to male friendship in this country. And trust me, once you see it, you can't unsee it. When you were a kid, you probably had a best friend. Someone you told everything to. Someone who knew your fears, your dreams, the weird stuff you thought about. You weren't afraid to say you loved that person. You spent hours together doing nothing, and it felt like everything. Then something changed. Around age 15, maybe 16, you learned a new rule. Real men don't do that anymore. Real men don't share feelings. Real men don't say they need anyone. Real men certainly don't tell other men they care about them. Research from developmental psychologist Niobe Way found that boys and teenage males talk about their friendships the exact same way girls do. Right up until about age 15, they use words like love. They talk about not being able to live without their best friends. They share their deepest fears. Then suddenly, that voice disappears. Not because boys stop needing connection, but because society teaches them that needing connection makes them weak, makes them feminine, makes them gay. And that's where the programming starts. You learn to replace emotional intimacy with activities. You don't talk about your life, you talk about sports. You don't share your struggles, you crack jokes. You don't ask for help, you pretend everything's fine. Your friendships become transactional relationships, built on shared hobbies instead of shared humanity. And the crazy part? You don't even notice it happening. Fast forward to your 20s and 30s. Now your friendships are based entirely on circumstance. You have work friends because you see them every day. You have gym friends because you're there at the same time. You have friends from that one thing you do on Thursdays. But remove the circumstance and the friendship evaporates. You change jobs, those friendships are gone. You move to a new city, starting from 0. You get into a serious relationship, your guy friends suddenly become optional. And here's the brutal truth that most men refuse to acknowledge. You never actually learned how to make real friends. You learned how to have activity partners, guys you do things with. But when the activity ends, what's left? Nothing. Because the foundation was never about connection, it was about convenience. Let's talk about what happens when you get married or enter a long-term relationship. Society tells you this amazing lie. It says your partner should be your best friend, your lover, your confidant, your emotional support system, your social coordinator, everything. One person handling every single emotional need you have. And you believe it. So you let your guy friendships fade. You stop reaching out. You stop making plans. You tell yourself you don't have time. But the reality is you stop prioritizing it. Then your wife or girlfriend starts complaining. She feels suffocated. She says you're too dependent on her. She wishes you had your own friends. And you look at her confused because wasn't that the deal? Wasn't she supposed to be everything? That's what the movies told you. That's what society promised. But no woman, no matter how much she loves you, can fulfill every emotional need you have. That's not her job. That was never her job. Meanwhile, many modern women maintain their friendships. They text their friends constantly. They schedule regular meetups. They share their struggles, their fears, their wins. They have a support network outside their romantic relationship. They understand that one person can't be everything, but you outsourced your entire emotional life to your romantic partner. And when that relationship hits a rough patch, or God forbid it ends, you realize you have absolutely nobody else. No safety net, no support system, just you, alone, wondering how the hell you got here. Here's what the data shows. Only 21% of men report getting emotional support from friends each week. Compare that to 41% of women. More than half of men say they're unsatisfied with the size of their friend group. 2/3 of men say no one really knows them. Think about that. No one really knows you. Not your work colleagues who see you every day. Not your drinking buddies. Not even the guys you've known for years. They know the performance, the mask, the version of you that's always fine, always handling it, always strong. But the real you, the one with doubts and fears and struggles, that guy stays hidden. And this isn't just about feeling lonely. Loneliness increases your risk of early death by 50%. It's as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It increases your risk of heart disease, stroke, dementia, depression, and anxiety. It makes you more likely to turn to alcohol, drugs, or other destructive coping mechanisms. It creates a downward spiral where loneliness breeds more loneliness. Isolation breeds more isolation, until you're so disconnected you don't even remember what connection feels like. But here's where it gets even darker. Society pretends to care about mental health. Posts about checking on your strong friends, suicide prevention hotlines, awareness campaigns. But when it comes to men actually admitting they're struggling, crickets. Or worse, mockery. A man who admits he's lonely gets called pathetic. A man who says he needs friends gets told to man up. A man who shows vulnerability gets labeled as weak. So men learn to suffer in silence. They learn to pretend everything's fine, even when they're drowning. And society rewards this lie by calling it strength. Let me paint you another picture. You're 40 years old. You've been so focused on your career, your relationship, your responsibilities, that you completely neglected friendships. Now you look around and realize everyone else has their established friend groups. The guys from college who stayed close. The work crews who actually became real friends. The hobby groups that turned into genuine bonds. And you're on the outside looking in. Starting from scratch feels impossible. You don't know how to even begin making friends at this age. Where do you go? What do you say? How do you explain that a 40-year-old man has nobody he can really talk to? Some men try to fix this by joining things. A gym, a sports league, a gaming group, and they find activity partners, people to do stuff with. But that same pattern repeats. The friendship never goes deeper than the activity. Nobody talks about real things. Nobody shares what's actually going on in their lives. It's surface-level connection masquerading as friendship, and everyone involved knows it. But nobody wants to be the first one to get real and risk the rejection. Others try to rely entirely on their romantic relationships. They dump everything on their girlfriend or wife. Every struggle, every fear, every need for validation or support. And it creates this toxic dynamic where she becomes both lover and therapist and friend and emotional dumping ground. She didn't sign up for that. Nobody can handle being everything for someone. So she starts pulling away, creates distance, maybe cheats, maybe just emotionally checks out. And the guy doesn't understand why. He gave her everything. He was loyal, faithful, present. Why isn't it enough? Because you confused dependency with love. You confused emotional outsourcing with intimacy. A healthy relationship requires both people to have full lives outside that relationship. She needs her friends. You need yours. She needs her interests. You need yours. She needs space to be herself. You need the same. But many modern men don't have that. They have work, the gym, maybe one hobby, and their relationship. Remove the relationship and their entire world collapses. Here's the part that's going to sting. You're probably part of the problem. Think about the last time a male friend reached out to you with something real. Maybe he was going through a divorce. Maybe he lost his job. Maybe he was just feeling down. How did you respond? Did you sit with him in that discomfort? Did you ask questions? Did you really listen? Or did you change the subject? Crack a joke to lighten the mood? Give him some generic advice about staying positive? Because that's what most men do. We're so uncomfortable with emotional vulnerability, even when someone else is showing it, that we shut it down immediately. There's this phenomenon researchers talk about where men stash their friendships away. Many guys report seeing or speaking to their best friends every 2 or 3 years and just picking up where they left off. And they think that's fine, that's normal, but it's not. You can't maintain a real friendship on 2 conversations every 3 years. That's not a friendship, that's an acquaintance with history. A real friendship requires regular investment, time, effort, vulnerability. The kind of maintenance most men simply don't do because they were never taught how. The structure of modern life makes this worse. 30 years ago, men had built-in social spaces. The local bar where the same guy showed up every Friday. The church or community center with regular gatherings. The bowling league or poker night or neighborhood association. These third spaces created natural opportunities for friendship without anyone having to try too hard. Now, those spaces barely exist. The local bar is full of strangers staring at their phones. Church attendance is down. Bowling leagues are gone. Everything's been replaced by screens and streaming services and staying home. Remote work accelerated this collapse. 2/3 of remote workers haven't made a single work friend. Work used to be where men form friendships by default. Proximity and shared experience created bonds. Now you're sitting alone in your home office, attending Zoom meetings where nobody has real conversations, and wondering why you feel so disconnected. Because you are disconnected. We all are. And let's talk about technology for a second. Social media promised to connect us. Instead, it gave us the illusion of connection while making us more isolated than ever. You can have 500 friends on social media and not a single person who actually knows you. You can scroll through everyone's highlight reel, comparing your behind the scenes to their carefully curated posts, feeling worse and worse about your own life. You can send memes back and forth with dozens of people without ever having a real conversation. It's junk food for your social needs. It tricks your brain into thinking you're connected while leaving you emotionally starving. Here's what nobody wants to admit about male friendships and relationships. Some women actively sabotage them. Not all women, not even most women, but enough that it's worth mentioning. She gets jealous when you spend time with your friends. She questions why you need a guys' night. She makes plans that conveniently conflict with your standing poker game or basketball league. She subtly communicates that choosing your friends over her is choosing wrong. And slowly, without even realizing it, you start declining invitations, canceling plans, prioritizing her comfort over your friendships, until one day you wake up and realize you don't have friends anymore. Just her. And if that relationship ever ends, you have nothing. But even in healthy relationships, many men self-sabotage their friendships. You feel guilty for taking time away from your partner. You tell yourself you should be spending that time with her, or working, or handling responsibilities. You prioritize everything else over friendship because society taught you that friendships are optional, recreational, not essential, and that belief is killing you. Friendships aren't optional. They're not a luxury. They're a basic human need. As fundamental as food or water or sleep. Without them, you slowly die from the inside out. Let me tell you what this really costs you beyond loneliness. When you have no real friends, you have no perspective. You can't reality check your thoughts. You can't get outside opinions. You can't see your blind spots. You end up trapped in your own head, spiraling in your own narratives, with no one to pull you out. Your girlfriend becomes your only source of validation, your only sounding board, your only connection to the outside world. That's way too much power to give one person. Way too much dependency. When you have no real friends, your mental health deteriorates, depression creeps in, anxiety intensifies. You start questioning everything about yourself because you have no external validation that you're okay. You lose confidence because there's no one reinforcing your value. You become more irritable, more withdrawn, more hopeless. And here's the cruel irony. The worse your mental health gets, the harder it becomes to form friendships. Because who wants to be friends with someone who's clearly struggling? So you hide it even more, pretend even harder that everything's fine. And the cycle continues. When you have no real friends, your romantic relationships suffer. Women can sense desperation. They can sense when a man has no life outside the relationship. It's not attractive. It creates pressure. So she becomes responsible for your entire emotional well-being, and that's exhausting. She wants a partner with his own friends, his own interests, his own full life. She wants to be chosen because you want her, not needed because you have nothing else. But when you're isolated and lonely, you cling. You become needy. You make her your everything. And ironically, that's what pushes her away. When you have no real friends, you have no support system during crisis. Losing a job, getting divorced, dealing with a death in the family, facing a health scare. Any major life challenge becomes exponentially harder when you're facing it alone. You have no one to lean on. No one to help you process. No one to remind you that you'll get through this. Just you, alone in your head, spiraling in your worst thoughts with no one to pull you back to reality. So what's the solution? How do you break this cycle when you're already deep in it? The uncomfortable truth is that building real friendships as an adult man requires doing the exact thing society taught you not to do. You have to be vulnerable. You have to initiate. You have to risk rejection. You have to show up consistently, even when it's inconvenient. You have to have real conversations instead of just talking about sports or work. You have to be the friend you wish you had. Here's what that actually looks like. Stop waiting for friendships to happen to you. They won't. Not at this age, not in this culture. You have to actively pursue them. Join something, a sports league, a book club, a volunteer organization, a gaming group, a martial arts class, whatever interests you. Show up consistently, same time, same place, every week. Consistency creates familiarity, and familiarity creates opportunity for connection. But here's the crucial part. Don't just participate in the activity. Actually talk to people, ask questions, show interest in their lives. Share something real about yours. Not your entire life story in the first conversation, but something beyond surface-level small talk. Test the waters, see who responds, see who reciprocates. Those are your candidates for deeper friendship. Then take it outside the activity. That's the bridge most men never cross. You see the same guys every week at the gym, or the league, or whatever. But it never goes beyond that context. You have to be the one to suggest grabbing a beer after, getting breakfast before, meeting up outside the usual time. Most guys will say yes if you actually ask. They're just as lonely as you are. They just don't know how to initiate either. Start having real conversations. This is where it gets uncomfortable. You have to move past talking about sports and work and surface level stuff. When someone asks how you're doing, actually answer. Not the automatic fine, but something real. You've been stressed about this thing at work. You've been feeling weird about getting older. You're excited about this new project. Whatever it is, share something true. And when they share something, actually listen, ask follow-up questions. Show that you care. That's how emotional intimacy builds, slowly, through repeated small acts of vulnerability and reciprocity. Accept that some attempts will fail. You'll invite guys to hang out and they'll decline. You'll try to go deeper and they'll deflect. You'll share something real and get a joke back instead of real engagement. That's fine. Not everyone is capable of real friendship. Not everyone wants it. Not everyone is in a place to reciprocate. You're looking for the ones who are, and the only way to find them is to keep trying. Prioritize your friendships like you prioritize everything else in your life. Put them on your calendar. Treat them as non-negotiable commitments, not optional if you feel like it. If you can schedule work meetings and gym sessions and date nights, you can schedule friend time. Make it regular, weekly if possible. at least monthly, because friendships die from neglect. You can't expect to maintain a real friendship on sporadic contact when you happen to think about it. If you're in a relationship, have an honest conversation with your partner about this. Tell her you're working on building friendships, that you need time for that it's important for your mental health and for the health of your relationship. Most women will support this because they understand the value of friendships, and they don't want to be your only source of connection. But communicate about it. Don't just disappear every Thursday night without explanation. Make her part of the process, not an obstacle to it. And here's the hardest part. You have to be willing to do the emotional labor. Women are socialized to maintain friendships. They text first, they make plans. They check in, they remember birthdays. They ask how things went with that thing you mentioned last time. Men typically don't do this. We wait for the other person to reach out. We forget to follow up. We don't maintain the connection between hangouts. If you want real friendships, you have to be the one who does these things. You have to be the one who texts first, who suggests plans, who remembers details, who follows up. It feels unnatural at first because you've never done it, but friendship requires investment, and someone has to go first. Let me be clear about what I'm not saying. I'm not saying you need a dozen best friends. I'm not saying you need to share every feeling with everyone. I'm not saying you need to become some emotionally expressive person that feels foreign to who you are. What I'm saying is that every man needs at least one or two people he can be real with. People who actually know him. People he can call when things get hard. People who would notice if he disappeared. That's not asking too much. That's basic human connection. And I'm not saying women are the enemy. Many women genuinely want their partners to have strong friendships. They encourage guys' nights. They suggest reaching out to old friends. They understand the value of social connection. The problem isn't women. The problem is a culture that taught men to suppress their need for friendship, to view emotional intimacy as weakness, to base their worth on self-sufficiency and independence. That culture hurts everyone. It creates isolated men who become angry, depressed, and dangerous to themselves and sometimes others. The loneliness epidemic among men isn't a personal failure. It's a systemic issue created by decades of cultural messaging that told men to be islands, to handle everything alone, to never need anyone, to never admit struggle, to never ask for help. And now we're seeing the consequences. Record suicide rates, declining mental health, relationship breakdowns, radicalization into extremist ideologies that promise belonging, substance abuse, violence. All of it traces back to disconnection, to men who have no one who really knows them, no one they can really talk to, no one who would catch them if they fell. So let's stop pretending this is fine. Let's stop acting like men are naturally less social than women. Research shows men want emotional intimacy in friendships just as much as women do. They just don't know how to create it. They were never taught. They were taught the opposite, and now they're paying the price. If you're sitting here realizing you have no real friends, you're not broken, you're not pathetic, you're not uniquely screwed up. You're the product of a culture that failed to teach men how to connect. But you're not stuck. You can learn, you can build friendships. You can create a support network. It will feel awkward and uncomfortable and unnatural at first. You'll feel like you're doing it wrong. But that discomfort is just unfamiliarity. It's not failure. Keep going. Start today, right now. Think of one person you could potentially be friends with. Someone you see regularly. Someone you get along with. Someone who seems decent. Message them. Suggest grabbing coffee or a beer or doing something together outside your usual context. Most likely they'll say yes, and if they don't, try someone else. Because on the other side of that initial discomfort is something you desperately need. Connection. Real human connection. The kind that makes life worth living. Let's talk about what happens when you finally admit you're lonely. Society has this weird double standard. Everyone posts about mental health awareness. Everyone shares hotline numbers during Suicide Prevention Month. Everyone says check on your strong friends. But when a man actually admits he's struggling with loneliness, the response is usually silence or worse. People get uncomfortable. They don't know what to say, or they minimize it. Oh, you just need to get out more. Have you tried joining a gym? Just download a friend-making app. As if decades of learned behavior and cultural conditioning can be fixed with a few surface-level suggestions. The reality is that admitting you're lonely as a man feels like admitting failure. Like you did something wrong, like there's something fundamentally broken about you. Because society sold you this lie that successful men have tons of friends, a thriving social life, a packed calendar. And if you don't have that, it must mean you're not successful, not worthy, not enough. So men hide their loneliness. They pretend they prefer being alone. They act like they don't need anyone. They perform independence while dying inside from isolation. But here's what actually separates men who break this cycle from men who don't. It's not charisma. It's not being naturally social. It's not even having tons of free time. It's being willing to be the first one to be real, to admit you want friendship, to reach out without waiting to be reached out to show up consistently even when you don't feel like it, to risk rejection over and over until you find people who reciprocate. That's what it takes. And most men aren't willing to do it because it requires vulnerability, which feels too much like weakness. Think about your childhood friendships again. You didn't analyze whether someone was cool enough to be your friend. You didn't worry about seeming desperate. You didn't calculate whether reaching out first meant you cared more than they did. You just liked someone and wanted to hang out with them. So you asked, that's it. No complicated social calculus. No protecting your ego. Just genuine desire for connection. As adults, we complicate it. We add layers of fear and insecurity and social games that make simple connection feel impossible. But it's not impossible. It just requires returning to that childhood directness while having adult emotional depth. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Some men are addicted to being busy. They work 60-hour weeks not because they have to, but because it gives them an excuse. An excuse for not having friends, not maintaining relationships, not dealing with their loneliness. They wear their busyness like a badge of honor. Like it proves they're important, successful, needed. But strip away the work, and what's left? Nothing. No hobbies they actually enjoy. No friendships they've nurtured. No life outside their job title. And then they retire, or get laid off, or burn out. And suddenly, they're forced to face the emptiness they've been running from for decades. Dating culture makes this worse. Apps reduced human connection to a swipe. You match with someone, exchange a few messages, maybe meet up once, and if there's not immediate chemistry, you move on. That same transactional mindset bleeds into how men approach friendship. You meet someone, hang out once or twice, and if it's not immediately clicking, you give up. But real friendships don't work that way. They take time. They take multiple hangouts before you get comfortable. They take pushing through awkward silences and finding your rhythm together. Apps trained us to expect instant connection, so we never develop the patience required for real relationships to build. Let's also address the elephant in the room: money, class, status. These things affect male friendship in ways we don't talk about. If you're making six figures and your old friends are struggling, hanging out becomes complicated. You can't suggest expensive restaurants or trips they can't afford. You feel guilty about your success. They might feel resentful of it. So you drift apart. Or if you're the one struggling financially while your friends are doing well, you feel inadequate. You decline invitations because you can't afford to keep up. You avoid conversations about career success because yours isn't happening. So again, you drift apart. Class mobility in America often means friendship loss. You improve your life, move to a better neighborhood, get a better job, and suddenly you don't relate to your old friends anymore. But you also don't quite fit in with people at your new level. You're stuck in between, not poor enough for your old crew, not rich enough for your new one. Lonely in a different tax bracket, and nobody talks about this. We act like success means gaining everything, but often it means losing the people who knew you before. Race and culture add another layer. Many men of color grow up with different friendship norms, tighter communities, more expressive relationships. But then they enter predominantly white professional spaces where emotional reserve is the norm. Where male friendships are activity-based and surface level. and they have to choose: assimilate and lose part of themselves, or maintain their cultural friendship style and risk being seen as too much. Too emotional, not professional, it's exhausting. And it's another way modern American culture destroys male friendship. Age makes everything harder. In your 20s, everyone's in the same boat. Single, figuring things out, available to hang out with minimal notice. In your 30s, people start getting married, having kids, buying houses in the suburbs. Their priorities shift, their availability shrinks. By your 40s, everyone's entrenched in family life and career responsibilities. Making new friends at this age feels nearly impossible. You're supposed to have your friend group established by now. Showing up somewhere new and trying to break into existing friend circles feels pathetic. So many men just stop trying. They accept loneliness as the price of getting older. But it doesn't have to be that way. There are men in their 50s, 60s, 70s building new friendships because they finally admitted they need them. Organizations like Men's Sheds in Australia started specifically to combat male loneliness in older men. They create spaces for guys to work on projects together, but more importantly, to talk, to share, to connect, and it's working. Men who spent decades isolated are forming bonds, learning that it's never too late, that admitting you need friendship isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Therapy can help, but it can't replace friendship. I've seen guys try to make their therapist their only confidant. And while therapy is valuable, it's a professional relationship. Your therapist is paid to listen to you. They're trained to help you, but they're not your friend. You can't call them at midnight when you're having a panic attack. You can't invite them to grab a beer. You can't share the random funny thing that happened today. Therapy is a tool, but it can't fill the friendship void. You need both. The pandemic revealed how fragile our social connections were. Suddenly, everyone was isolated. Everyone was struggling. And you know what happened? Men's mental health crashed. Suicide rates among men spiked. Substance abuse increased. Violence increased. Because when you remove the few thin threads of connection men were barely maintaining, the whole thing collapses. Many men never recovered. They got used to isolation during lockdown. It became their default. Now, years later, they're still barely leaving their houses, still barely seeing anyone, still telling themselves they're fine, but you're not fine. Humans are social creatures. We evolved in tribes. We survived because we had each other's backs. Isolation goes against our fundamental nature. Your brain isn't wired for this. Your nervous system isn't designed for this. Every day you spend disconnected from real human relationships is a day your mental and physical health deteriorates. That's not opinion, that's biology. Here's a test. When was the last time you had a conversation that went deeper than surface level small talk? Not with a therapist, not with your romantic partner, with a friend. When was the last time someone asked how you're really doing and you actually answered? When was the last time you shared a struggle and someone sat with you in it instead of immediately trying to fix it or change the subject? If you can't remember, or if it's been months or years, you don't have real friendships. You have acquaintances, and acquaintances can't save you when you're drowning. The path forward isn't complicated, but it is uncomfortable. You have to acknowledge the problem. Stop pretending you're fine alone. Stop acting like you don't need anyone. Stop performing independence while secretly suffering. Admit, at least to yourself, that you're lonely, that you want connection, that you need friends. That admission is the first step. Everything else builds from there. You were not designed to be alone. You were not built to handle everything by yourself. You were not meant to go through life without anyone really knowing you. That's not strength. That's slow suicide. And you deserve better than that. Every man does. The question is whether you're willing to do the uncomfortable work of building what society failed to give you. The choice is yours, but the clock is ticking. And isolation doesn't get easier with age, it gets harder. So start now, reach out, be vulnerable, build something real. Because your life, your mental health, and your relationships depend on it.